Hello, welcome to the Talking Europe debate on France 24. Our discussion today centering on events on Europe's doorstep, namely Turkey's incursion against Kurds in northern Syria after the surprise troop withdrawal by President Trump. Now, a couple of weeks on, Turkey and Russia have made a deal that demands the Kurds pull back 30 kilometres from almost the entire Syria-Turkey border. Already, at least 120 civilians have died in recent weeks, while more than 176,000 have been forced to flee, this according to the United Nations. So then, what about Europe's response? Heads of state condemned the incursion at the latest EU summit, and member states agreed to stop selling arms to Turkey. But should Europe go further? If so, how? And with what aim? To debate all of this, I'm joined by three MEPs, all of them members of the EU Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee. And we have with us Traian Băsescu, Romanian MEP from the centre-right European People's Party and a former president of Romania. Hello there.
Hello.
Hi. Next to you we have Sergei Legodinsky, a German Green MEP. Hi there.
Hello.
And across on the other side, we also have Thierry Mariani, French MEP from the Identity and Democracy Group. Hello.
Hello.
I want to say to our viewers as well, you yourself have been to Syria several times. I think it's 7 times since 2015.
The last year since the war, 7 times.
Which has proved controversial for many people on various occasions. So we'll perhaps come back to the relations with Syria. But we will, of course, start by looking at the Kurds themselves. We have a report for you about the Syrian Kurds from Sanam Chantier.
Syria's Kurds are a distinct group and they have inhabited lands close to the Turkish and Iraqi borders for decades. And large numbers of them have been subjected to systematic discrimination. Now, one of their main factions, the Democratic Union Party, the PYD, began to establish a foothold in the north of the country in the early stages of the Syrian conflict, which started in 2011. This as Bashar al-Assad's forces withdrew to battle the anti-government uprising elsewhere. An affiliated militia, the People's Protections Unit, the YPG, then secured the region. Their control was concentrated in 3 predominantly Kurdish regions, home to roughly 2 million Kurds. They were Qamishli, Kobani and Afrin, all in the north of the country. And so Kurdish-led governing bodies were set up in those areas and Syrian flags were replaced with their own. At the time, the group opted to stay in the shadows, neither fighting nor supporting Assad's regime. Instead, they were trying to defend and expand their own territory. The area of YPG influence continued to grow, especially as the fighters joined the US-led coalition against the Islamic State group, becoming the spearhead of the Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF. SDF influence widened to Manbij and Raqqa, and by 2017, the Islamist militants were defeated in both cities. Their biggest victory was in 2014 in Kobani, which raised some concerns for the Turkish authorities. Ankara feared that Syrian Kurds on their southern border were and continue to gain too much de facto autonomy.
No Daesh, no Daesh.
In the US, however, the group had found a reliable partner, but that is now under question. Since early August, the US and Turkey have been working together on a series of confidence-building measures in a 75-mile-long strip of that 300-mile border area. American-backed Kurdish forces, for their part, have pulled back several miles and destroyed fortifications in that region.
So there we are. Let's have a look, as I said, at what Europe's response could or should be to events in Syria. First off, we had condemnation at the latest EU Council from the heads of state and government. Some wanted to go further. For example, Mark Rutte, the Prime Minister of the Netherlands. Is this good enough, condemning what's happening in northern Syria?
Well, we have to look in a pragmatic way at the events from northern border of Syria. On the end of the day, the Turkish army started an operation in order to, in name of Turkey security, as they declare. Now we have to see if is real terms of such action, because in same time we have here in the humanitarian elements and the migration elements. And the actions of Turkish army are not exactly what is needed to protect the life of these peoples which are around the border, in one hand. In another hand, the movement of Kurds with 30 kilometers inside of Syrian territory, letting in hands of Turkish army places, detention places, where a lot of ISIS soldiers are detained. What will happen with these peoples? Who will control?
But are you saying wait and see for the moment? Are you saying that Europe should wait a little and see what?
No. Europe have to act, but unfortunately we will act as usually with statements and with the declaration of some countries that the licenses for export of armament in Turkey will be cancelled, but Erdogan can buy arms from Putin at a huge level.
Sergei Lagodinsky?
I mean, the problem, to begin with, the problem is precisely what led to this very soft statement of the European Council. The fact that all of those decisions have to be enacted unanimously. And the fact that we have with Hungary this Hungarian government who is flirting with Erdogan, who has been flirting with Erdogan all these days, is unacceptable. And frankly, it cannot be the case that one country blocks a resolute decision, a more resolute decision and more resolute steps, just because they think that they're friends with an occupying power.
So
this is not okay.
There should be more. There should be some action.
I think this is a wake-up call for the European Union, that we have to make ourselves a political actor. And one step to that would be abolishing unanimous votes on, for example, foreign policy issues, in order to make us movable, actable.
Thierry Mariani, should the European Union be saying stronger things, doing more, taking action?
Well, in fact, we do nothing. Excuse me. We take some resolutions, some statement, but in fact, in the Middle East, since 2011, we are completely absent. We saw who is present: America, Turkey, Russia. This tragedy is the sign of the weakness of Europe, and is the sign that, in my opinion, it's time to organize a sort not a European army, but a sort of a military corps who can be present. What's happened, for example, when America decided to withdraw her troops, French and British were there. But we didn't have enough logistic, and we must go away. And in fact, all this situation proved that if we want to exist in that sort of conflict, we must have a minimum of troops can be present in that case.
Okay, so in terms of more action, we're talking about stronger foreign policy, European troops, some kind of European force, or?
I think if we want to exist, it's necessary. Excuse me, the last year proved that the state to exist is the state to have troops on the ground. Here we take resolution, but the history and the power is the country who has troops.
Well,
honestly speaking, I'm not very convinced that we need the army of European Union. In one or another way, we must clarify our relations inside of NATO.
Absolutely.
Why to develop two armies, army of European Union, army of NATO, when we must re-establish our relations with the United States? Let's be honest.
But are you talking about a European army as such?
We are not agree on this point. I want an independent European army. I think, excuse me, what's happened just prove one thing. Even if we are inside the NATO, it's the American who decide alone. I don't support the politics now of Trump's, but he decided to withdraw. What can we do? And we must to have an independent army.
I think it's quite significant. I'm sorry. It's quite significant that someone who is a representative of a right-wing political groups is advocating for more common action. And if we can meet there, if we're talking about more common action, for example, also in foreign policy, not just having an army. And by the way, I would agree that we should rather work on better in-syncing, having our national armies in sync and having a labor division between armies. But we need decision-making that would deepen our decision-making and ability to act within the European Union, whereas your parties always advocate for drifting apart and not consolidating power within the European Union. And I think it's quite surprising. I admire your position on that.
Because, excuse me, until now the position of Europe is all the time make a defense linked with NATO. And I think all this story proved that we cannot trust anymore in America. No. If we want to be in a safe position, we must have our own army.
No, in my opinion, we must handle more intelligent the resources which the NATO have in one hand, and to find the solution, having Trump like a partner and not like the one which don't care about Europe.
But Donald Trump is very unpredictable. Would you not agree? Would you not agree Donald Trump has proved very unpredictable during his time in office with his relations outside of the US?
Like a proof, we don't have to take into the consideration always the decisions of Trump. Look at what is happening in Europe now. They dropped 20,000 troops for training in Europe, Americans, which means they care about Europe. The problem is how to use this NATO force, because we were very powerful on the period when, together with Washington, we make the interventions like a geopolitical power, together France, Germany, UK, and United States.
I'm a little bit concerned that we're talking here only about military options.
Yeah.
We are the biggest trade partner for Turkey. And there are plenty of things on the table, except for creating a common army and marching with the army into northern Syria. I mean, we're talking about targeted actions. We're talking about Hermes loans that for example, we have in Germany, and other loans. And we're talking about custom union, because the Turkish government is very interested in an update of custom union. I mean, this would have been a chance, an opportunity for European Union to say, these are clear actions that we're taking. For example, the arms sales, that we block arms sales, not just those for the future, but also for the past, the contracts that we already enacted. This never happened. So even now, with the portfolio that we had, Europe has shown that they are impotent, and I repeat it once again. It's not just out of nowhere. It's because we are unable and unwilling to reform our foreign and security policy, and also to discipline, I would say, certain countries like Hungary and others.
Well, in terms of trade with the EU, as you said, the EU is Turkey's #1 trade partner. Turkey is the EU's #5 trade partner, and it's worth 76 billion euros to Turkey each year. Now, economic sanctions of some kind could be an action that the EU could take altogether and very quickly. Of course, forming a European army, that's not an immediate option.
Of course, there is sanction about weapons, but as you know, my party thinks that we must finish completely the negotiation with Turkey in Europe. This negotiation is since many years. These events show that Turkish is not European country with European
values. You mean the accession
value.
negotiations?
Yes,
it's been
negotiation
going on since
to join
1999.
Europe. Yeah, and I think it will be a good response.
Yeah, well, this is of course an instrumentalization of this current crisis for particular perspectives of Front National, or whatever the name of the new party is.
But even the EPP said the same thing in France.
We should look at this exactly. And Turkey has and should have a European future. And in order to enable this European future, we have to be harsh on Turkey now.
you mean-
It's not the other way around.
Do you mean that you believe one day that Turkey should be an EU member? Because Angela Merkel seemed to close that down.
Well, I'm
just a
not
few
from the
months ago.
party of Angela Merkel, and Angela
She's a
Merkel...
very powerful voice in
Yeah.
Europe, however.
She was a very powerful voice in Europe. Now let's look and wait for von der Leyen, what she's going to say on that. The position in Germany, but also the position among most of the parties in this parliament is, okay, we can suspend negotiations with Turkey, but we should not abruptly end negotiations with Turkey, because
After
this is
20
the only
years,
lever
isn't
that
it
we
a
have.
Isn't it a bit of a charade after 20 years?
Well, I mean, we should look at, it's not just 20 years, it's more than 20 years that we have promised Turkey to be part of European family, and we have never delivered. European Union, this is a very sad story, but the solution is not now to use this opportunity to tell them, as many of your parties say, this is a Muslim country and they don't belong to Europe. This is a wrong message. This message should not be sent now.
Okay, one last word perhaps from Mr. Basescu.
I fully agree that we don't deliver, but in same time, in the Turkey don't deliver. The conditionalities to be integrated in European Union. But for sure, we cannot abandon Turkey.
Yes.
So it's not time to close off accession?
No, it will be a big mistake, like the mistake with Macedonia and Albania, which was produced just last week.
What about then the migrants, very quickly, who are in Turkey? Recep Tayyip Erdogan has been threatening to open the doors to Europe to refugees. Do you believe that if the EU takes action against Turkey, that he will send refugees to Europe?
Honestly, I
And use
don't
these
believe...
people as pawns?
I don't, regardless of the fact that this is a kind of inhumane talk that we're talking here about, but this will have a pull and push effect that would mean that even more people will come to Turkey in order to follow to Europe. And I don't think this is realistic.
Okay, well, we will, of course, have a debate on that another time. We are out of time right now. Thank you all very much for taking part. Thanks to you for watching. See you soon on France 24 for more European news.
I'm Gulliver Cragg, France 24's correspondent in Kiev. I'm forever crisscrossing Ukraine, Poland and other countries in the region to keep you up to date with all the news from Central and Eastern Europe. Join me on Live from Paris and in all France 24's news and magazine programmes.
Gulliver Cragg, one of the 200 France 24 correspondents around the world.